Alpha King bought a castle full of old junk. What he found inside shocked him. The stone walls were crumbling, and the towers leaned as if weighed down by time itself. Yet, despite its decay, something about the place called to him, a quiet whisper that tugged at the corners of his mind. He had bought the castle on a whim, drawn by its mystery, though advisors had warned him it was nothing but old junk. Old junk, he muttered, his deep voice echoing against the cliffs. Perhaps, or perhaps it is something more. He had always been a man of power, commanding armies, leading his people and bending the world to his will. Yet in the quiet moments of the night, he felt an emptiness he could not name. This castle, forgotten and abandoned, seemed to mirror that emptiness. He imagined the corridors as veins of history, the dust as memories, the shadows as the past reaching for him. The gates were rusted, the hinges groaning as he pushed them open. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of old stone, mildew, and a faint trace of something sweet, like perfume long vanished. The halls were lined with shattered furniture, broken chandeliers, and piles of books with pages yellowed by time. Each step he took echoed loudly, as if the castle itself were breathing along with him. "This place is alive," he whispered to no one, though he felt as if it were listening. His piercing eyes scanned the grand hall, noting the faint light filtering through cracks in the windows. Dust motes danced like tiny stars in the pale sunlight, and the wind howled through the broken walls, carrying with it whispers that seemed almost like voices. He walked deeper into the castle, guided by instinct more than sight. A grand staircase spiraled upward, its once polished wood now warped and brittle. Paintings hung crookedly on the walls, their colors faded, but the eyes of the figures seemed to follow him. He paused before a portrait of a woman with kind eyes and a faint, sad smile. She seemed familiar, though he had never seen her before. He felt a shiver run down his spine, as if the painting were aware of his presence. "This place has secrets," he said quietly, "and I will find them." As he explored, he noticed a door at the far end of the hall, slightly different from the others. Its wood was darker, smoother, as if it had been cared for while the rest of the castle fell apart. Curiosity pulled him forward. The handle was cold to the touch, and when he turned it, the door opened with a soft creak. Inside was a small chamber, illuminated by a strange, golden light that seemed to come from nowhere. The walls were lined with shelves filled with objects he could not immediately recognize. Strange trinkets, jars filled with glittering powders, and books bound in leather that shimmered with faint magic. In the center of the room was a large chest, carved with symbols that seemed to shift when he looked at them. He approached the chest, his hand hovering over the lid. A sudden gust of wind swept through the room, though the windows were closed and the golden light flickered. For a moment he felt a presence behind him, something watching him. He turned, but there was nothing, only the shadows dancing on the walls. Slowly he opened the chest. Inside were more objects, carefully arranged. An intricately carved crown, a silver dagger that gleamed as if freshly polished, and a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon. As he lifted the letters, he noticed the handwriting, delicate, precise, and almost familiar. He untied the ribbon and read the first page. The words were old, but they spoke of hope, of love, and of sorrow. His heart tightened as he read. These were not ordinary letters. They were the memories of someone long gone, someone who had lived and suffered in this castle centuries ago. The king felt a strange connection to the writer, as if her pain and longing were reaching across time to touch him. He realized that this castle, abandoned and forgotten, held not only objects but the echoes of lives that had once been lived within its walls. Hours passed as he explored room after room, discovering more hidden chambers, each filled with remnants of the past. There were toys in one room, left behind by children who had long since vanished. There were journals in another, filled with stories of betrayal, courage, and forbidden love. And in a small, hidden study, he found a mirror unlike any he had seen before. Its frame was black as night, and its surface shimmered with an inner light. He gazed into the mirror, and for a moment he saw not his own reflection, but a scene from long ago. A queen walked through the castle, her gown flowing behind her, her eyes filled with sadness and longing. The king blinked, and the vision vanished, leaving only his reflection staring back at him. "What are you trying to show me?" he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. He had always been a man of reason, but the castle seemed determined to pull him into something beyond logic. As night fell, the wind grew stronger, and the castle seemed to awaken. Doors slammed shut on their own, and shadows moved along the walls like living creatures. He felt a presence near him again, closer this time, and heard a soft voice whisper his name. "Who's there?" he called, his deep voice steady though his heart raced. There was no answer, only the echo of his own voice. Yet the whisper came again, clearer now, almost pleading. Drawn by the sound, he followed it down a narrow corridor that he had not noticed before. The walls were covered in vines that glowed faintly, as if alive. At the end of the corridor was a door he had never seen, smaller than the others, carved with symbols that seemed to move when he looked at them. His hand trembled as he reached for the handle. The door swung open, revealing a small chamber bathed in golden light. In the center of the room was a cradle, though it looked ancient and empty. Beside it was a small wooden box, and on top of the box lay a key that seemed to hum with energy. He picked it up, feeling warmth spread through his fingers. As he turned, the shadows in the room shifted, and a figure appeared. A woman, her form delicate, her eyes shining with a light that was not of this world. She smiled at him, a sad, knowing smile, and spoke without moving her lips. "You have come," the voice whispered, echoing in his mind. "I have waited for you." The king's breath caught in his throat. He had expected many things when he bought this castle, but never this. A presence, a spirit, something alive within the walls that had been abandoned for centuries. Yet he did not feel fear. Instead, he felt a pull, a connection that was impossible to ignore. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low and steady. "I am the keeper of this place," she replied. "I am bound here by history, by sorrow, and by love that was never fulfilled. And now you are here. Perhaps you can change it." The king's mind raced. 1,000 questions crowded his thoughts, yet he felt calm in her presence. There was a familiarity, a sense of destiny, as if the castle had been waiting for him all along. He realized that this was no ordinary building of stone and dust. It was alive, and it was speaking to him in ways he could not yet understand. He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "What do you want from me?" he asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "Only to be remembered, only to be freed," she whispered. The light around her seemed to pulse with her words, as if the castle itself responded. A sudden sound broke the moment, a loud crash from somewhere deep within the castle, followed by a low, rumbling growl that made the floor beneath his feet tremble. The king's eyes narrowed. Something else was awake in the castle, something that had been sleeping for centuries. He moved toward the sound, his instincts as a ruler and warrior taking over. Yet even as he approached, he could not shake the feeling that the woman's spirit, gentle and sorrowful, was guiding him, drawing him into a deeper mystery than he had ever faced. The shadows shifted again, and for a brief moment he thought he saw figures moving along the walls, faces twisted in anguish, eyes filled with longing. The air was thick with energy, old magic that had waited patiently for someone who could understand it. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the noise stopped. Silence fell over the castle, but it was not empty silence. It was a silence that spoke of secrets, of promises, of pain and hope intertwined. The king stood alone in the chamber, holding the glowing key, aware that the castle had chosen him for something greater than he could yet imagine. He knew, deep in his heart, that his life had changed the moment he crossed the castle gates. This was not a place of ruin, it was a place of destiny, and within its walls he would find truths that could alter not only his life but the very history of the kingdom he ruled. As he turned to leave the chamber, the whispers returned, softer this time, almost tender. "Stay if you dare," they said, and in that single moment the king felt the weight of the castle's gaze upon him, and the stirring of a story that had waited centuries to be told. Outside, the wind howled over the cliffs, and the sea crashed against the rocks below. But inside, the castle was alive with secrets, memories, and a presence that would not rest until its story was complete. And the Alpha King, standing at the threshold of the unknown, understood that his journey had only just begun. Cliffhanger. The Alpha King stepped forward, and as he did, the ground beneath him trembled, revealing a hidden passageway that had never been there before. Beyond it lay something impossible, something waiting for him in the darkness. The hidden passageway was narrow and steep, carved into the stone beneath the castle. The Alpha King gripped the glowing key tightly in his hand, feeling its warmth pulse with each step he took. The air in the corridor was cool and damp, carrying the scent of earth, old stone, and something faintly sweet, like flowers blooming long ago. Shadows danced along the walls as his torch flickered, and he could hear faint whispers echoing from the depths. He descended slowly, each step measured, his senses alert. The castle had already revealed itself as more than a building. It was alive, as if it were testing him. He could feel its presence watching, guiding, and waiting for him. The key hummed softly, almost like a heartbeat, drawing him toward the unknown. At the end of the passageway, he entered a chamber unlike any he had seen before. It was large and circular, with walls covered in murals that glowed faintly in the torchlight. The images depicted a kingdom long gone, kings and queens who had lived, ruled, and suffered within these walls. He saw battles, celebrations, betrayals, and sorrow. Among them, one figure appeared more than once, a queen, regal and kind, her eyes filled with both joy and sadness. The king stepped closer, his eyes tracing the details. The murals seemed to shift slightly as he moved, and for a moment he swore the queen in the painting looked directly at him. He felt a pull in his chest, a connection he could not explain. It was as if she were calling to him across the centuries, reaching for something she had lost long ago. "This castle, it holds memories," he whispered, "and perhaps it holds her." As he explored the chamber, he noticed a pedestal in the center of the room. On it rested a small black mirror, framed with silver runes that shimmered faintly. He approached it cautiously, his reflection appearing first. But then, as he looked deeper, the image shifted. He saw a woman standing in the castle, moving gracefully through corridors he had not yet discovered. Her gown flowed behind her like water, her hair shimmering in the dim light. Her eyes were filled with longing, and she looked directly at him. He stepped back, unsure if what he had seen was real or an illusion. The air in the chamber felt charged, and the temperature seemed to drop. Yet he did not feel fear, only a deep, pulling curiosity. "Who are you?" he whispered, his voice barely more than a breath. The mirror did not answer, but the air shimmered around him, and he felt the faintest touch on his hand, like a memory brushing against reality. Then a soft voice spoke, clear and musical, though the lips of the queen did not move. "I am bound here," the voice said. "By sorrow, by time, and by love that was never fulfilled. You have come, perhaps, to set me free." The king's heart pounded. He had faced armies, storms, and rivals, but nothing had ever unsettled him as much as the presence in this room. The voice was gentle, sad, and strangely familiar. He felt an urge to reach out, to understand, to connect. I will help you," he said. "Tell me what I must do." The queen's spirit shimmered in the mirror, her form flickering like candlelight. "The castle holds the key to my freedom," she said. "But the key alone is not enough. You must understand the past, face the pain, and embrace the truth. Only then will the curse be broken." The king nodded, though he did not fully understand. He had always been a man of action, not of patience, but the castle demanded something different. reflection, understanding, and courage. He knew instinctively that this was not a simple task, and that the journey ahead would test him in ways he could not yet imagine. As he studied the murals again, he noticed small doors hidden along the walls, barely visible beneath the glowing paint. One of them creaked open as if inviting him in. He stepped inside and found a narrow spiral staircase, leading further down into the castle's depths. The air grew colder, and the whispers more insistent, carrying fragments of voices, laughter, crying, and words of warning from long ago. He descended carefully, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down upon him. At the bottom, he entered a hall filled with objects covered in dust and cobwebs. There were broken toys, shattered mirrors, old furniture, and stacks of books with pages brittle and yellowed. Among the clutter, he noticed a small desk with a bundle of letters tied neatly with ribbon, similar to those he had found earlier. He untied the ribbon and began reading. The letters were from the Queen herself, written long before the curse had bound her spirit. She spoke of hope and fear, of love lost and betrayal endured. She had waited for someone who could see her, understand her, and restore what had been taken from her. Each word made the king's heart ache, as if the centuries of loneliness and sorrow had reached across time to touch him directly. Hours passed as he read, the outside world forgotten. He discovered stories of the castle's original rulers, of a kingdom torn apart by greed and jealousy. The queen's words revealed her kindness, her courage, and her deep love for her people. She had been betrayed by those closest to her, left to die in a chamber beneath the castle. The letters spoke of magic, protection, and a hope that someday someone would come to restore what had been lost. A sudden noise made him start. It was a soft, metallic clink, coming from somewhere deep within the hall. He lifted his torch and followed the sound, moving carefully among the debris. In a corner, partially hidden beneath a pile of old rugs, he found a small, ornate box. The runes on its surface glowed faintly, matching the symbols on the mirror. He opened it to find a delicate necklace, a single gemstone glowing with a soft, inner light. The moment he touched it, the air shifted. Shadows moved along the walls and the temperature dropped. The queen's voice whispered again, closer this time, almost like she was standing behind him. "You are close," she said. "The castle tests all who enter. Will you be strong enough to see the truth?" The king's hand tightened around the necklace. He felt a surge of power and responsibility. The castle was not merely a place. It was alive, and it was guiding him towards something important. He realized that the queen's spirit was not merely a memory, but a presence that needed him to act, to understand, and to care. Suddenly, the chamber shook, and the walls seemed to pulse with energy. The torch flickered wildly, casting strange shadows that danced across the murals. Figures appeared in the corners of his vision, faces of kings, queens, and children, all looking at him with silent questions and pleas. The king's mind raced, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had faced storms, wars, and betrayal before, and he would face this as well. Yet the castle was unlike anything he had known. It required more than strength. It required empathy, courage, and understanding. As the shaking subsided, the king noticed a small door at the far end of the hall. Unlike the others, this one was sealed with a silver lock, glowing faintly in the torchlight. The necklace pulsed in his hand, as if urging him forward. He approached the door, fitting the key he had found in the cradle into the lock. The lock clicked and the door creaked open, revealing a spiral staircase descending even further into the depths. A chill ran down his spine. The air here was colder, heavier, filled with the scent of ancient magic. He could hear whispers again, but now they were more insistent, urgent, calling him to descend. He stepped carefully, the torchlight flickering over the walls covered in runes and symbols that seemed to move when he looked at them. At the bottom of the staircase, he entered a vast chamber, the ceiling lost in shadows above. In the center, a pool of water reflected the flickering light of his torch. He approached the edge, peering into the depths, and saw his own reflection, but it was not alone. Standing behind him in the water was the queen, her eyes full of longing and sorrow. The king's heart ached. He reached out, and for a moment it seemed as if he could touch her. The water rippled, and her image shimmered and faded, leaving only his reflection staring back at him. "You are the one," her voice whispered, echoing through the chamber. "The one who can see, the one who can free me. But be warned, the castle will not give up its secrets easily. Darkness waits, and only those who are willing to face the truth can continue." The king swallowed hard, his mind racing. He had come to the castle seeking mystery and perhaps adventure, but he had found something far greater, a presence, a story, and a destiny that called to him across time. He realized that this was only the beginning. The castle had chosen him, and he would have to rise to the challenge, no matter the cost. As he turned to leave, the water in the pool began to glow, and the shadows along the walls deepened. A low, rumbling sound filled the chamber, vibrating through the stone floor and into his bones. He could feel something moving beneath the water, something ancient and powerful, waiting for him to act. The Alpha King gripped the necklace tightly, knowing that the journey ahead would test not only his strength but his heart. He had glimpsed the queen, her sorrow, her hope, and her courage. And he knew that to free her, he would have to confront the castle itself, and the secrets it had held for centuries. Cliffhanger. In the darkness, the pool began to rise, and the whispers turned into cries. The Alpha King felt a cold hand brush his shoulder, and a voice, clear and urgent, whispered directly into his mind. "Do you dare enter the heart of the castle and face what has been waiting for you for centuries?" He stood frozen, the necklace pulsing in his hand, as the chamber trembled around him. The path ahead was unknown, dark, and dangerous, and the true test of his courage and heart was only beginning. The Alpha King stood in the chamber, gripping the glowing necklace tightly. The air was thick with magic, heavy and almost alive. The whispers from the pool had grown louder, more urgent, echoing off the stone walls. The water rippled violently, and shadows stretched along the walls like dark fingers reaching for him. He knew the castle was no longer simply a building of stone and memory. It had awakened. He took a cautious step forward, his boots echoing on the stone floor. The torch in his hand flickered, but the light of the necklace pulsed stronger, casting a golden glow that seemed to push the darkness away. His eyes scanned the room. The murals that had once depicted kings and queens in frozen moments now moved. Figures danced, ran, and disappeared, replaying the history of the castle as if time itself had been trapped in the stone. The Alpha King felt a shiver run down his spine. He had faced armies, storms, and betrayal, yet nothing had ever felt so alive, so watching. The queen's voice whispered again, closer this time, almost as if she were standing beside him. "Do you feel it?" she asked. "The castle is alive. Every sorrow, every joy, every secret, it all waits for you." He nodded, unable to speak. His heart pounded not with fear but with a mixture of awe and anticipation. He had been drawn here, not only by curiosity, but by something far older, something that seemed to recognize him, that had waited for him across centuries. He stepped closer to the pool, watching the water swirl as if stirred by an unseen hand. The reflection of the queen appeared again, more vivid than before. Her eyes held a mixture of longing and warning. "You must understand the past to free me," she said. "The curse was not born from love but from betrayal. Only by facing the truth and the darkness within yourself will you succeed." The Alpha King felt the weight of her words. He had been a man of action all his life, decisive and strong, but this challenge required patience, understanding, and courage of a different kind. He took a deep breath, letting the quiet strength within him rise. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled and the water in the pool began to rise. The room was filled with a low, rumbling sound that grew louder, vibrating through his bones. Shadows moved faster, merging and separating, creating forms that were both human and strange, neither living nor dead. He lifted the torch higher and stepped closer to the pool. The queen's reflection grew brighter, her form becoming more tangible. She seemed to reach out to him, her hand passing through the surface of the water. "I can guide you," she whispered, "but you must choose. Will you step into the heart of the castle and face what has waited for centuries?" The Alpha King's jaw tightened. He had never turned from a challenge, and he would not start now. He stepped toward the water. The moment his hand touched its surface, a shock ran through him and the room changed. The walls of the chamber seemed to dissolve, replaced by the vision of a great hall, grand and filled with light and life. Figures walked through it, children laughing, nobles speaking, music playing. And in the center, a queen, beautiful and sorrowful, watched as her kingdom fell apart. He understood then. These were memories, echoes of the past trapped in the castle, replaying over and over. He saw betrayal, greed, and fear, the same forces that had imprisoned the queen's spirit, and he felt a deep sorrow for the lives lost, for the love denied, and for the hope that had been crushed. The queen's voice whispered again, softer now. "Do you see it? Do you understand why I am bound here?" "Yes," the Alpha King replied, his voice steady despite the emotion rising within him. "I see, and I will set it right." The pool shimmered, and the shadows on the walls grew darker, coalescing into a single form. It was massive, taller than any man, its eyes glowing like embers. The Alpha King realized this was the manifestation of the curse, the anger, sorrow, and betrayal made solid. The figure moved toward him, slow and deliberate, testing him, challenging him. He raised his torch and stepped forward, his own presence strong and unwavering. "I am not afraid," he said. "I will face you." The shadow roared, a sound that shook the chamber, and lunged toward him. The Alpha King held the necklace aloft, and a golden light spread from it, pushing the darkness back. The shadow hesitated, recoiling from the light. The queen's reflection in the pool grew brighter, and her hand reached toward him again, her voice guiding him. "Do not falter. The castle responds to courage and heart, not to fear." The Alpha King took a deep breath and stepped fully into the space of the shadow, letting the light from the necklace flow through him. The shadow shrieked and twisted, forming into smaller, more human shapes, faces of the past rulers, faces filled with regret and sorrow. They reached for him, not in violence but in longing, and he realized what he had to do. He spoke aloud, his voice calm but firm. "I see your pain, I see your sorrow, I honor your memories. You are free to rest." The shadows wavered, then began to dissolve, turning into mist that rose and faded into the ceiling. The room returned to its previous state, the pool calm once more. And in its center the queen appeared, more vivid than ever, her form fully visible, her eyes shining with gratitude and something warmer, hope. "You have done it," she whispered, her voice full of emotion. "You have faced the curse, and you have honored the past. The castle is free, and so am I." The Alpha King stepped closer, unable to resist the pull he felt toward her. "It is not just the castle," he said softly. "It is me as well. I have changed because of what I have seen here." The queen smiled, and the golden light of the necklace spread around them, filling the chamber with warmth. The shadows had gone, but the sense of history, of life and love, lingered. The Alpha King realized that the castle, once abandoned and silent, was now alive with memory and magic, guided by his courage and heart. For a long moment, they simply stood there, looking at each other, feeling the connection that had crossed centuries. There was no need for words. Each understood the other, each had been changed by the events of the night. But even in this moment of calm, the Alpha King felt a stir of unease. The castle had revealed one layer of its secrets, but he sensed there was more. A presence, darker than the curse he had faced, lingered in the corners of the chamber. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was there. A reminder that the castle's story was not yet complete. The queen noticed his unease and placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Do not fear," she said. "You have passed the first test, but the heart of the castle still holds mysteries, dangers that you have not yet seen, and soon you will understand what waits beyond these walls." The Alpha King nodded, his resolve firm. He had faced fear, sorrow, and shadows, and he had emerged stronger. He would continue no matter the challenge, for he understood now that the castle was not only a place of history, but a place of destiny, and he was a part of it. As dawn approached, the chamber was bathed in a soft, golden light. The Alpha King and the Queen stood side by side, feeling the warmth of the rising sun mingle with the magic of the castle. For the first time he felt a sense of peace, tempered by the knowledge that greater challenges awaited. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the halls, a low, rumbling growl, faint but insistent. The Alpha King's eyes narrowed. The castle had calmed, the curse had been lifted, but something else was stirring, deeper within the walls. The Queen's gaze followed his. "The next trial will be harder," she said. "It is not only the past you must face, but forces that have waited for centuries, hidden in darkness. You must be ready." The Alpha King gripped the necklace, feeling its power and warmth. "I am ready," he said. "Whatever waits, I will face it." The shadows in the chamber shifted again, flickering across the walls as the morning light fell through the broken windows. The castle, once silent and abandoned, was now awake, aware and watching. And somewhere in the deepest corridors, something stirred, a presence older and darker than the curse, a challenge that would test not only his strength, but his heart and his very soul. The Alpha King took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the distant corridors leading into darkness. He knew that the path ahead would be dangerous, full of secrets and trials, but he did not falter. He had faced fear, sorrow, and shadows, and he had emerged stronger. He would continue, guided by courage, heart, and the connection he had formed with the Queen. Cliffhanger. But a shadow darker than anything he had seen slipped silently through the walls. The Queen's voice, soft but urgent, echoed in his mind. "Be careful. Not all that waits within these walls wishes you well. Some secrets are older than even the castle itself." And in that moment, the Alpha King realized that the true heart of the castle, and the greatest challenge of all, was still ahead. The Alpha King stood at the entrance to the castle's deepest corridor. The torch in his hand flickered against the walls, and the necklace in his pocket pulsed warmly. The castle had revealed many of its secrets, but he knew that the heart of its mystery still lay ahead. He felt the Queen's presence near him, a comforting yet fragile light in the darkness, guiding him forward. The corridor stretched into shadow, twisting and turning in ways that seemed impossible. The walls pulsed faintly, as if alive, and the air carried the scent of earth, old wood, and a faint sweetness he could not place. Whispers of the past echoed around him, laughter, cries, and the quiet voices of those who had lived and died within these walls. The Alpha King pressed forward, his footsteps steady and deliberate. "This is it," he whispered, "the heart of the castle." The Queen's voice answered, soft and clear. "Yes, but be prepared. What waits is not just the past. It is something older, darker, and more determined to remain hidden." He nodded, his jaw tight, and stepped into the central chamber. The room was vast, its ceiling lost in shadow. The walls glimmered with runes, moving subtly as if alive. In the center was a large black stone pedestal. On it rested a dark crystal, swirling with shadow and light. The Alpha King knew instantly. This was the source of the curse, the heart of the castle's mystery. The crystal pulsed, and the shadows in the room shifted. A deep, rumbling growl filled the air, vibrating through the stone floor and into his bones. Shapes formed in the darkness, figures tall and menacing, with eyes glowing like embers. They were not fully alive, yet not fully dead. They were the remnants of the castle's curse, born of betrayal, greed, and sorrow. The Alpha King stepped forward, his torch held high. "I am not afraid," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "I will face whatever this is, and I will free the castle and her." The shadows lunged. He lifted the necklace from his pocket and a warm, golden light spread from it, pushing the darkness back. The queen's presence grew stronger and he felt her guiding him. "Use your heart," her voice whispered. "The light of courage and love can overcome what fear cannot." The Alpha King took a deep breath, centering himself. He remembered the murals, the letters, the memories of the past. He felt the sorrow, the longing, and the pain of the centuries, not as a distant observer, but as someone who truly understood. He realized then that strength alone would not defeat the curse. He had to face it with compassion, courage, and trust. He stepped closer to the pedestal, holding the necklace above his head. The shadows shrieked, forming into more distinct shapes, the faces of past rulers, their eyes full of accusation and grief. Yet instead of striking them, he spoke calmly with authority and care. "I see you. I honor your lives. I understand your sorrow and your mistakes. You are free to rest." The shadows paused, wavered, and then slowly began to dissolve. The black crystal on the pedestal trembled, and the room filled with a soft, golden light. The Alpha King approached the pedestal and placed the necklace upon the crystal. A warm energy spread from it, flowing into the room and touching every corner. The queen appeared in the chamber, fully formed, glowing with a soft, radiant light. Her eyes met his, filled with gratitude and something deeper, hope, trust, and something that felt like love. "You have done it," she whispered. "You have faced the darkness and you have freed me and the castle." The crystal pulsed once more and then cracked, breaking into fragments that scattered across the floor. The shadows vanished completely, and the chamber, once dark and threatening, now glimmered with a soft, warm light. The air felt lighter, filled with the scent of flowers and earth. The castle, once silent and heavy with sorrow, now seemed alive in a new way, hopeful, vibrant, and free. The Alpha King stepped toward the queen, feeling a warmth in his chest he had never known. For the first time in his life, he felt that his strength alone was not enough. It was his heart, his courage, and his willingness to understand that had made the difference. "Thank you," he said, his voice low but steady. "I never imagined a castle could feel, or a spirit could guide me so strongly." The queen smiled, her eyes soft and full of emotion. "It is because of you," she said. "You have the strength to lead and the heart to heal. That is why the castle chose you." He reached out his hand. She took it, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still. The shadows of the past were gone, replaced by a radiant light that seemed to fill every corner of the castle. The Alpha King felt a deep sense of peace, tempered with the knowledge that challenges and responsibilities still awaited him. The queen's voice grew soft, almost shy. "You have shown courage, kindness, and understanding, and now, perhaps, we can begin anew together." He nodded, feeling a connection he had never experienced before. "Together," he repeated, "not bound by fear or sorrow, but by choice and trust." The castle seemed to respond to their words. Light flowed along the corridors, illuminating rooms that had been dark for centuries. Flowers bloomed where dust had lain, and the air carried the fresh scent of life and renewal. The Alpha King walked through the halls, the queen at his side, feeling the presence of the castle's history, but also its future, a future they would shape together. As they reached the great hall, the murals on the walls transformed. The scenes of sorrow and betrayal were replaced with images of harmony, laughter, and joy. The figures in the paintings smiled, their eyes no longer accusing, but filled with peace. The Alpha King understood that this was more than restoration, it was redemption. Not just for the queen, not just for the castle, but for him as well. They climbed the grand staircase to the highest tower. From there, the view of the cliffs and the sea below was breathtaking. The sunlight broke over the horizon, scattering gold across the waves. For centuries, this castle had been silent and abandoned, but now it sang with life. The queen turned to him, her eyes full of warmth. "The past is behind us," she said, "and the future is ours." The Alpha King nodded. He had faced fear, sorrow, and shadows, and he had emerged stronger. The trials had tested him, but they had also shown him what it truly meant to lead, with strength and heart, courage and compassion. Yet even as they stood together, a faint movement caught his eye. Beyond the cliffs in the distance, shadows shifted, shapes that seemed to watch the castle, waiting. The queen followed his gaze. "Not all threats are gone," she said softly. "The world beyond the castle still holds danger, but we are ready." He took her hand firmly. "We will face it together," he said. "Whatever comes, we face it as one." The wind blew through the tower, carrying the scent of the sea and the castle's new life. The Alpha King and the Queen stood together, looking out over the cliffs, feeling the connection that had grown stronger with every challenge. The castle was no longer a place of sorrow, but a home, alive with memories, love, and hope. The Alpha King realized that the journey he had begun when he bought the castle had changed him in ways he could not have imagined. He had learned patience, understanding, and the power of the heart. He had discovered that true strength lay not only in command and action, but in compassion and trust. The Queen's presence beside him was no longer that of a distant spirit, but of a partner, a guide, and a companion. Together they could face whatever the future held, and the castle, once abandoned and silent, stood as a testament to the power of courage, love, and redemption. As the sun climbed higher, the castle glimmered in its new light. The Alpha King and the Queen walked through its halls, each step echoing with life and promise. The past had been honored, the curse lifted, and the future awaited them, full of possibilities, challenges, and hope. And though shadows may still linger in the world beyond, the Alpha King knew that he had found something stronger than fear, stronger than sorrow, stronger than darkness itself. He had found courage, love, and the power to transform not only a castle, but his own heart. Ending cliffhanger/epilogue hook. The Queen tightened her hand in his, and the Alpha King's eyes narrowed. "Whatever comes," he said, his voice steady, "we will face it together." And the castle, now alive and full of light, seemed to hum in agreement, ready for whatever the future might bring.